The coldest woman in the room is sometimes the most interested one, and the man who misreads that coldness as indifference walks away from something that was never indifference at all. Today we learn to read the difference because missing it has cost more men more genuine connections than almost any other mistake available. What we're covering today are 7 specific signs that reveal genuine attraction underneath cold or guarded exterior behavior, rooted in attachment psychology, self-protection research, and the specific patterns that female interest produces when it is managing genuine fear. One of them involves something she does that looks like rejection but is actually the opposite. Another involves a behavioral pattern so consistent that researchers can predict it, but that most men experience as completely random. And the 7th, the climax, is the deepest psychological truth about cold behavior and hidden attraction that most men never understand until they've lost something real. All 7. Let's go. Here is the honest premise. Coldness and indifference are not the same thing. They look similar from the outside. They feel similar to the man on the receiving end, but they come from completely different psychological places, and they require completely different responses. Indifference is the absence of feeling. It asks for nothing and offers nothing. It is genuinely, simply not engaged. Coldness is almost always the presence of feeling, managed, protected, and expressed through distance rather than warmth because the feeling feels too risky to express directly. Today, we learn to tell them apart. 7 signs, real psychology. Let's get into it. Bold claim, genuine indifference is consistent. It doesn't fluctuate. It doesn't have warm moments followed by cold ones. Inconsistent coldness, warmth that appears and then retreats, is almost always a sign of genuine feeling being imperfectly managed. Here is the psychology. Emotional regulation research documents that suppressing genuine feeling requires active, ongoing effort. The suppression is not passive, it is continuous work, and like any effortful process, it fails intermittently. The feeling breaks through in unguarded moments before the management reasserts itself. For a woman who is attracted to someone but is managing that attraction through cold or guarded behavior, this produces a specific pattern, moments of genuine warmth, real laughter, specific warmth in eye contact, a response that came from somewhere real, followed by a return to the cooler baseline as the management kicks back in. That oscillation, that specific back and forth between warmth and coolness, is the feeling making itself visible despite the management. Consistent coldness, coolness that never breaks, that has no moments of genuine warmth, is much more likely to be actual disinterest. Inconsistent coldness, the warmth that appears and then retreats, is almost always attraction, learning to trust. Scenario: a man named Kevin had been trying to read a woman named Dana for 3 weeks. She would be warm in moments, genuinely, specifically warm, and then seemed to reset to something cooler before the warmth had fully developed. He described this to his friend as confusing. His friend said, "Consistent would mean she doesn't care. What you're describing is someone who cares and keeps catching herself caring." Kevin paid attention differently after that, and the inconsistency started looking like something completely different. Bold claim, one of the most revealing signs that coldness is attraction-based rather than personality-based is that it is specifically, consistently directed at you, while her behavior with other people in the same environment is noticeably warmer. The psychology here is straightforward and powerful. If she is genuinely a cold person, someone whose social style tends toward reserve and distance, that quality would express itself somewhat consistently across her interactions. Some people are genuinely more guarded in general. That is personality, not interest management. But when a woman is warm and relaxed with others in the same room, animated, open, genuinely at ease, and specifically more guarded with you, the differential is information. Her nervous system is responding differently to you than to others, which means you are producing a different internal state in her than others are. And that different state, that specific activation of something that requires management, is almost always some version of genuine interest. She is not cold to the world. She is specifically careful with you. And specific carefulness about a specific person is not indifference. It is the opposite. Bold claim: a woman who is managing attraction through cold behavior cannot fully suppress the attention that genuine interest produces, and that attention leaks through in specific, observable ways that contradict the coldness. She knows what you said last week, not in a general way. Specifically, the detail, the particular thing, the exact words. She noticed when you wore something different. She registered when your energy was quieter than usual. She tracked something about your behavior that required genuine attention to catch. This specific attention, operating beneath the surface of the cool exterior, is her interest refusing to be fully contained. People don't pay that quality of attention to people they feel nothing for. The attention is involuntary. It is the interest expressing itself through the channel that hasn't been fully closed down, through noticing, through registering, through the specific retention of details about someone who matters. When the cold exterior and the specific attention exist simultaneously, when she seems distant but clearly knows things about you that require genuine investment to track, you are looking at managed attraction. Mini story. A man named James had resigned himself to a woman named Priya being simply uninterested. She was cool with him, formal almost. Then something happened that reframed everything. In a group conversation, someone mentioned James had been dealing with something difficult that week. Priya knew about it, not from James. She had apparently noticed a change in his energy several days earlier and asked a mutual friend about it. She had been tracking him closely enough to notice something he hadn't shared, while maintaining exterior coolness. James said, "That's not what indifference looks like. That's what self-protection looks like." He was right. Bold claim: some female coldness is not passive. It is active and deliberate, a specific testing behavior that is designed to reveal character. And understanding this transforms what feels like antagonism into something completely different. Attachment theory identifies proximity testing, the behavior of creating mild adversity to evaluate whether a potential attachment figure remains stable and warm under mild pressure. It is the nervous system's way of gathering real information about whether someone is safe before extending genuine trust. When she is specifically cool with you, slightly provocative, slightly challenging, slightly harder to win over than others seem to be, she may be running a specific assessment, not to be difficult, to find out whether you become anxious, defensive, or cold in return, or whether you remain grounded, warm, and genuinely unbothered. Her coldness is the test. Your response to it is the data she is collecting. The man who becomes visibly anxious about her coolness, who pursues harder, becomes performatively warm, or retreats coldly himself, fails the assessment. He demonstrates that his stability depends on her approval, that he cannot hold himself together when she is not providing warmth. The man who remains grounded, warm, genuine, completely unbothered by her temperature, demonstrates exactly what she is testing for, that he is stable, independent of her response. That closeness with him would not require her to be responsible for his emotional state. That demonstration is what turns the test into trust. Bold claim: the most honest glimpse of a woman's real feelings appears not in the moments she has managed, but in the unplanned moments when the management temporarily releases. And those unplanned moments are more revealing than anything she says or does deliberately. Genuine emotion breaks through management in specific conditions. Genuine laughter, moments of stress where the performance requires too much energy. Moments when something you say reaches past the guard before she has time to reinforce it. Watch for the laugh that surprises her, the one that came from somewhere real before she could calibrate her response. Watch for the unguarded moment when she says something warm and then catches herself and returns to the cooler baseline. Watch for the specific look that appears and then disappears, the one that was honest before the management reasserted itself. These unguarded moments are not mistakes. They are the truth of her feeling briefly making itself visible. And they are more reliable than any deliberately managed behavior because they came from somewhere she didn't choose to reveal. Scenario: a woman named Anna had maintained cool professional distance with a man named Marcus for months, reserved, polite, but not warm. Then something funny happened in a group setting, something genuinely absurd that caught everyone off guard. Anna laughed, genuinely, and in the moment of that genuine laughter, she looked directly at Marcus, involuntarily, the way people look toward the person who matters most to them in a moment of unguarded delight. The look lasted less than a second. She looked away, returned to her usual composure. Marcus had learned to notice, and what he saw in that second was clearer than anything she had communicated in months of managed distance. Bold claim: the specific pattern of her coldness increasing when your attention moves toward others and decreasing when your attention returns to her is one of the most reliable indicators of genuine hidden interest available. The psychology is direct. Genuine indifference does not produce a differential response to where your attention goes. A woman who genuinely doesn't care whether you're interested in her will not show a detectable change in energy when you express interest in someone else. But a woman who is managing attraction through cool behavior will, despite her best efforts, register the movement of your attention, and that registration will produce a subtle but detectable shift, not necessarily dramatic jealousy, a slight quality of increased alertness, a subtle shift back toward warmer behavior, the specific response of a nervous system that noticed something it cared about and is responding accordingly. Watch for this pattern specifically. It is almost impossible to fake in both directions. She cannot consistently perform indifference to where your attention goes while genuinely feeling none. The differential response is honest, and it tells you something her maintained coolness was designed to conceal. This is the truth reveal, the deepest insight, the one that reframes every other signal we have covered. Bold claim: the intensity of a woman's coldness toward someone she is attracted to is almost directly proportional to how much she has to lose by being warm. The colder the exterior, the more real the feeling beneath it, and the more significant the potential connection she is protecting herself from losing. Here is the psychological truth that most people never hear stated this clearly. Cold behavior in the context of genuine attraction is not a wall between two people. It is a measure of investment. She is not cold because she doesn't care. She is cold because she cares enough that the risk of being warm, of being visible, of being vulnerable, of showing something real and having it not be received feels genuinely threatening. The size of the threat response is proportional to the size of the investment. You cannot be genuinely threatened by losing something you don't genuinely want. The coldness is the proof of the wanting, expressed in the only language available to someone who is not yet ready to want it out loud. Mini story. A woman named Claire, 41, had been through 2 relationships that ended with her having been more invested than the other person, had developed what her therapist called anticipatory self-protection. She became cooler toward men she was genuinely attracted to because the pattern of investing and losing had taught her nervous system to protect the investment before it became visible. She described it directly to her therapist. The more I like someone, the harder it is to be warm with them, because being warm means showing something real, and showing something real means it can be rejected. And I'm not doing that again until I'm more certain. Her therapist said, "So the men you're coldest toward are the ones you feel most?" Claire was quiet for a moment. "Yes, which is probably why none of them ever try harder. They think the coldness means I'm not interested. And they walk away. And I let them, because it confirms what I was afraid of." That is the deepest truth about female coldness and hidden attraction. The very protection mechanism she uses to prevent loss is the thing that most consistently produces it. Because the men who would have been worth the risk read the cold exterior as the whole story and never look for what's underneath. The man who understands this, who reads the cold not as the whole story, but as the first chapter of a more complex one, and responds not with anxiety or matching coldness, but with steady, warm, completely unruffled patience, is the man who eventually gets to see what was always there, not through persistence that becomes pressure, through the specific quality of consistency that makes the risk of being warm feel smaller over time. His warmth, maintained without demand, gradually tells her nervous system the thing it has been waiting to confirm. This person will not disappear when I show something real. This person will not punish my vulnerability with withdrawal. And when that confirmation accumulates enough evidence, when her nervous system has gathered sufficient data that being warm is safe, the coldness dissolves, not dramatically, gradually, like ice in warmth, and what emerges from underneath it is almost always worth the wait. Here is the question I want to leave you with. Is there a woman in your life right now whose coldness you have been reading as indifference when it might actually be something completely different? Because the cost of misreading this specific signal is not small. It is the specific loss of connections that were never absent, only protected. Drop in the comments. Have you ever been on either side of this? Either been cold toward someone you genuinely felt something for, or misread genuine coldness as disinterest and walked away from something real? Tell me what happened. I read every single one. And if today gave you a new lens for something you've been looking at without fully seeing, subscribe. Every week we bring this level of psychological depth to the questions that actually matter. See you in the next one. Stay warm, stay patient. The most interesting things often have the most protected surfaces.